Okay, so next we're gonna do a real quick one. We're gonna look at a way to add a shadow that moves into the distance a bit, that has a little bit of perspective. We added a shadow, say to like the flower that Mona Lisa was holding, but there the shadow, the cast shadow was right behind the flower, so it was basically exactly the same as the flower. What if it's going into the distance? How can we do something like that? So really fast, we need to look at perspective. Um, just so you can make it a little more realistic. So perspective is essentially the idea that as things move away from you, they look smaller. So the classic example is telephone poles moving into the distance on a highway. We know that the telephone poles aren't literally getting smaller. We know that the road isn't getting more narrow. But if we want to, we'll do those things in our artwork if we want to make things have perspective and have a sense of depth. So first of all, you have to understand about the horizon. The horizon is where the Earth meets the sky, right? Right there, the horizon line. That's why we call lines horizontal. It's the same as the horizon. And then the idea with perspective is that lines are going to converge onto points on the horizon line. So this is one point perspective, where all of these lines, they're moving away from us but parallel. They're going to converge into one point on the horizon line. So look, all of these lines of the highway meet right there, right? That's called the vanishing point. And not just those lines. Look, these telephone poles, if they're the same size, the tops of all of them will meet at the vanishing line. The bottoms of them will all meet at the vanishing point, excuse me. So we can use this a bit to our advantage if we wanted to try to do something with perspective in it. So I found a picture of a road. So I'm going to use this picture of a road. We're going to try to put a person on the road and then give them a shadow. So here's our road. I found two PNGs of people. You can find those hopefully and save them. Um, and we have to place PNGs, remember? So here's person. Here's our person. Here we go. So we're going to put him on the highway. I don't really know why this person in business casual clothing is standing on the highway, but maybe it's better not to ask these questions. So here he is. I'm not too happy with that, but oh well. Life's too short to deal with all those things. Okay, so um, first of all, we're going to put two people on the highway because let's practice perspective a little bit. So maybe really quickly we can try to figure out where the horizon line is. I'm just going to make some lines, see where they cross. All right. So look, there's the vanishing point right there. So it's not on the road right there, which is a bit of a surprise, but I would imagine the road dips down and then that's the actual horizon back there. But who cares really? Okay, so this is our vanishing point. Close enough. Okay, so now let's make some vanishing lines that deal with this guy. So we're gonna make it a different color so we can see maybe a little more clearly. There's all these shape tools right here, rectangle, ellipse. So from the center of this vanishing point, I'm going to make a line to the top of his head. And from the center, I'm going to make one to the sort of where let's say to the back of his feet. No, let's say to like where his heel would be. Okay, let's try that. So the reason we have all of this is we put another person in here. Right, place embedded. Person two, right? So here's this guy. Um, we understand perspective, intuitively. So we understand that let's make him the same size, right? But if he's back here, he's going to look huge because we understand how perspective works intuitively. So if we assume that they're basically the same size, essentially, but we wanted to put him further down the road with free transform tool, we can know exactly how big he would be if he was the same size. So if he's here on the road, he would be that size if they're the same size. So that's how you can use these vanishing lines to get sort of accurate looks in your perspective. Oops. Okay. So we have our two people here, person one and person two. Now let's give them shadows. When you place a PNG, they're objects. That's why there's these little icons here on the layers. And we don't want that for the shadows right now. So I'm going to duplicate both of these. Let's do it one at a time. You can shift click to select two, right click, duplicate layers, right? So we'll have two shadows, person two shadow, person shadow. And then I'm going to rasterize them. That means turn it into pixels. And then we're going to lock the pixels, just like we did with the Mona Lisa flower thing. And we're going to choose a mid-gray paintbrush, and we're going to paint them. Great. Right? We obviously don't want the shadow in front. The shadow will be under it. So I'll pull this one below there and this one below there. Okay, so now we've got our shadows, right? We can change the blending mode to multiply just like we did before. See how much that white fringing stands out? Oh, well. So we've got that, right? So if this guy was standing in front of a backdrop of a highway, that would be fine. But his shadow is going to be on the ground moving towards the distance a little bit. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to choose this guy's shadow first. Maybe I'll actually keep these on for a second. And then we're going to choose Edit, Transform, Skew. And now we can toggle how this shadow is going to look, right? We can make it very extreme if the sun is low. I would keep the top, this top line parallel to the horizon line, but it's going to pinch in, right? That's what perspective does. So we're starting to get there. So this would be the sun's really low. He's casting this really long shadow. You can make it really long if you want like a dramatic Wild West showdown. Maybe if it's a little more subtle, it would be more realistic. Maybe something like that. But keep this parallel with that. If you want to get really specific, you can get vanishing lines on either of his shoes. Try to match up how his shadow is going to decrease in size that way. Does that make sense? Okay, and toggle it a little bit so it's not in front of his feet. We don't want that. We want it to be sort of behind his feet. So there we go. We've got our shadow for him. Let's do one more for this guy. It should be kind of the same look because there's one sun. There we go. Okay, so if this is like a really strong, harsh light, maybe you'll get a crisp shadow like that. Usually shadows are going to be a bit blurry, so we'll have to unlock our shadow layers. And then we're going to use a Gaussian blur, which is under Filter, Blur, Gaussian blur. And you choose how blurry you want it to be. Maybe there for him. Yeah, maybe. I guess it should be pretty similar. There you go. And then we can adjust the opacity a little bit if you want. There you go. And there's two businessmen lost in the wilderness, stuck on the highway. What's going to happen next? Anyway, give it a try. See how it goes. Let me know what questions you have.